The wrath of God is going full force. We cannot remove God from our country.
What do you mean the wrath of God?
I feel like with Kamala Harris...
You're saying the wrath of God is coming after Kamala Harris?
No. I'm saying God is very not... sorry. Let me take it back.
Do you want Donald Trump to be a strongman president?
Of course I do.
Do you want Donald Trump to go after Democrats?
100%, yeah.
Do you want Donald Trump to go after the media?
Yes, I do. We need a new whole system on the media.
Do you think Donald Trump is the only man for the job?
Right now, 100%.
The only guy that could do this is Donald Trump.
The only one? Who else is there? Who else can put up what he does?
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Absolutely not.
You know, Trump supporters will say that Donald Trump is not a fascist, he's not a racist, he's not a sexist, he's not an idiot, he's none of those things. But after 10 years of dealing with this man, the truth is that that's exactly why they like him. They love his antics, they love the show that he puts on, and they're 100% in favor of everything that he stands for.
The fact that we have decided that in this country we are not going to honor civil rights should be something that we all take issue with. Considering the fact, for some that don't know what civil rights are about, because some people only believe that it deals with black folk, let me explain. Civil and political rights are a class of rights that protect individuals' freedom from the infringement by governments, social organizations, and private individuals. They ensure one's entitlement to participate in the civil and political life of society and the state. Defined another way, the right to be free from discrimination, the freedom to worship as we choose, the right to vote for our elected representatives, the protections of due process, the right to privacy. If any of that sounds familiar, it is because these are rights that are born out of our Constitution, something that we all supposedly have sworn an oath to, and we swear to not only, we don't just swear to it, we are supposed to protect those rights.
If they decided to go back to a monarchy and make Donald Trump the king, would you be okay with that?
I would do that versus what we're at now.
Yeah.
With the system being manipulated and corrupted, it isn't a true democracy. If you don't have legal justice for everybody, you are no longer a democracy. That's the whole core of democracy.
But Queen Melania will not have been born in the United States.
So, she's a great first lady.
But if she were a queen, would that be okay with you?
I don't care. Many of them haven't. I mean, she's a good person. Smart, beautiful.
God save the queen?
Never know. Now we have so much communism coming in and trying to take over our country, and they've been here for 20 years trying to, and they've been accomplishing it. They're good.
Be specific about that a little bit, like when you say the communism coming into the country, where in the form of?
Infiltration throughout the system. I think they've gotten into a lot of your local. I think the coasts have it a lot more than we do, but maybe it's just more obvious on the coast. You never know.
Do you think that any of the legal problems that the former president's having are going to hurt him in this coming election?
No, it makes him stronger.
In what way?
It's kind of like in the Bible. It says that God will put you through a furnace and you'll come out like stainless steel in the end. If you don't have tribulation and you stand for God, you must not be totally standing for him, because that's where we're at.
And how did Donald Trump make your life better?
Oh, he gives me hope that someone will stand up for it. As the Bible also says, whenever there's times of great trouble and you're his people, that he will provide a leader. And I do believe that Trump is our leader that God has given us. It's kind of like Charleston Heston was called the American Moses, and he was in charge of the NRA and did the "In my dead hands will the guns be pulled." Yeah, and that was his famous statement. Yeah. And I seen where they had the 10 Commandments on public TV, and public TV said Charleston Heston's the American Moses. And I go, well, he was there, and now he's handing the baton to Trump. And Trump is our leader.
Except that he's not.
Morals and standards.
I mean, every other word that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth is a lie. This dude literally tried to overthrow the government because he lost the election in 2020. Still won't admit that he lost the election in 2020. All right-wing media outlets and media figures talk about is DEI and how there's too many black and brown people in corporate positions. We're looking at that with the LA fires. Even though the overwhelming majority of fire chiefs in LA are white men, they're laser focused on the 3 black gay women because, there's too much DEI and only white men are qualified to do anything that counts. Donald Trump, who on the campaign trail in the middle of a debate said that Haitian immigrants were eating people's cats and dogs. Donald Trump, who is right now attempting to end birthright citizenship via executive orders. He can't do that. There's going to be a ton of court battles, but that's what he's doing. Donald Trump, who on day one is axing DEI programs from the federal government. Because if there's a black pilot on a plane, according to Charlie Kirk, if there's a black pilot, he's going to be nervous because there's no telling if this dude is actually qualified to fly the plane.
Did you hear about the Dismantle the DEI Act, which Republicans are trying to push through Congress in order to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the federal government? Here's a clip from the hearings.
You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression. We didn't ask to be here. We're not the same migrants that y'all constantly come up against. We didn't run away from home. We were stolen.
That was Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is a star, and she laid it out the way it needs to be laid out. And yet, some folks in Congress are just trying to rewrite history.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion are 3 words that don't necessarily mean what we think they mean. And in spite of the altruistic motives of some of the purveyors of it, diversity, equity, inclusion, as it's been initiated in our federal government as an ideology, seeks to categorize individuals based on their immutable characteristics. It is a rejection of the principle that people should be judged on the content of their character and their individual achievement rather than their sex, race, national origin, or ethnicity. DEI is a huge step backwards for our country.
Oh, yes, nothing screams fairness more than ignoring centuries of systemic racism and acting like it never happened. But let's see what else is going on at the hearing.
If we're being honest here, this bill, which will wipe out every diversity, equity, and inclusion program in our federal agencies, plus those who contract with us, plus those who receive grant money, plus our schools, is nothing new. This is just the final piece of a decades-long obsession with targeting and dismantling anything that might give marginalized people a fair shot, including DEI programs, which honestly started the second the Civil Rights Act passed. Policies like affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion are the closest things we've had to the mythical bootstraps that some of my colleagues insist historically and currently harmed communities need to pick themselves up back.
Of course, why fix inequality when you can just complain about the fix? And if you're wondering why they're so mad about equality, Representative Lee hits it on the head.
After centuries of efforts to keep us out of schools and universities, from jobs and elected office, Republicans targeting these policies are no accident. Why do predominantly conservative white men believe that the success of a black person or the opportunity or access of a black person is an existential threat to them? DEI is not given any unfair advantage that society itself does not already confer on certain Americans. It merely exists to ensure that all other people, that women, minoritized folks, queer folks, disabled folks, have the same opportunities to succeed and thrive in our workforce and our schools as people who have not had those opportunities systematically and legally stripped from them do. Is our country not greater when all of us have opportunities to succeed and contribute and survive?
Exactly. There's enough pie to go around. Calm down, Karen. Everyone can prosper. Let's just prosper together and let's help people in marginalized communities work their way up. The problem is not DEI. The problem is that the right is trying to pretend like DEI is an issue and that it's bringing people that are not qualified into the federal government. And that is not the case. First of all, it's not like when you implement a DEI program, you just go randomly and go, oh, you person who's not qualified to work at whatever government office, why don't you just come work over there? That's not what's happening. You have to be qualified. If anything, you could go the other way and look at all the people that Donald Trump is nominating for his cabinet. Talk about unqualified. And there hasn't been a person of color yet. I'm sure they're coming, but it hasn't come yet. And so we go back to this idea of DEI and why the right is so threatened by it. First of all, let's not forget, there's been systemic racism from a long time ago. Like Congresswoman Crockett was saying, black people did not come to this country voluntarily. They came and became slaves. Other people that are in marginalized communities did not ask to be part of the marginalized community. It's just that they're in the minority. Now, whether it's an LGBTQ person or whether it's somebody who's got a handicap issue or somebody who's person of color, whatever it is, these people for the longest time systemically were kept out. If you don't believe me, look up the Homestead Act. Homestead Act was something that was supposed to help people move west and build property. And they strategically kept it away from people of color, black people, Native Americans, and they gave it to white people. So they were basically giving handouts to white people to go build in the West. And they were like, oh, if you're black, we're not going to give it to you. Or like redlining. That's another one. You keep people out of a certain community by just keeping them away from where they might prosper. So let's not ignore the fact that we have marginalized communities, that there's been racism within our history, and that we need to help those marginalized communities get a leg up and do well. So let's put that on the side. And now let's look at DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And let's look at the fact that, once again, people that are being hired for certain positions are qualified. If you want to talk about unqualified, let's just look at this whole thing of DEI at universities, all right? They were saying that the Supreme Court decided that DEI is no longer going to be a thing at universities. And a lot of people were saying, well, they're giving positions, or they're giving, students, they're allowing students into universities based on their background, and they are favoring those people because they want to fill a quota. Now, let's not forget that a lot of these universities have legacies. They have people who went to that school before. And if that person comes from a family of, let's say, a white family that continues to donate money and continues to prosper, then their kid and their kid and their kid is going to keep going to that university. Whether the kid's qualified or not, they're going to get in. So where does that fall into diversity, equity, and inclusion? Why is that not something that's tipping the scale in the favor of the rich who've already prospered? Similarly, with what they're trying to do now with the federal government, we got to look at these positions and go, well, who's in these positions? Let's go to the Trump White House again. He had Jared Kushner as an advisor, as well as Ivanka. They're not qualified to be advisors at the White House, and yet they were because of nepotism, because this white dude was like, I want my white kid and her husband to be part of my administration. I mean, talk about unfairness, talk about not pulling yourselves up by the bootstraps, right? And so that's what they say a lot of times. Anytime there's any discussion about helping people that are in the lower income portion of our country, that we want to help them and maybe help them do better, maybe help them get jobs that they normally wouldn't be considered for. Anytime that discussion is had, the people who are prosperous will say, you got to pull yourselves up by the bootstrap. That's what I did. I pulled myself up by the bootstrap. Well, you went to private school, dude. You had a family that was there to take care of you. You were not growing up around gangs. You weren't growing up with a single mom. And maybe you did. Maybe you had all those things happen and you prospered. Good for you. But as a system, we need to help those who need help and are willing to actually do something. It's not like you're giving a job in the federal government to someone who's like, yeah, I'm just going to go sit in my office at the Department of Defense and just, play video games all day. I'm sure they do play video games all day. But my point is that that's not what's happening based on this DEI thing. It's this boogeyman that they've created yet once again, all right? It was immigrants are taking your job. Now black people and LGBTQ people are taking your jobs. And who knows who's taking your jobs next. And it's all so that you can have this big fraternity of brotherhood of these white guys from fraternities shaking hands and just giving each other jobs. We need diversity. It brings different points of view into these workspaces. I'm an actor, and I've noticed the move in Hollywood to have diversity in film and television, and it's more representative of the country that we are. And there's points of views that need to be heard. And by having those points of views heard in what's a melting pot in America, we do better as a country. Rather than keeping people of color and LGBTQ and other people that are marginalized, keeping them down and not giving them a shot, not letting them come into a situation where they can prosper, then you end up with just your same homogenous group of people running the country, moving ahead, and you're not helping out at all.